of political, social interaction activities in Zimbabwe, everything is on hold whilst the nation awaits the resolution of this ZANU-PF internal fighting that is taking place. Ever since Blessed Geza came out and dismissed Mnangagwa's so-called ED 2030 drive to stay in power until 2030, the nation has been on tender hooks. For those of you who haven't seen the clip, this is the clip I'm referring to.
Are you against the 2030 slogan?
Yeah, I'm very much against it. I think from my last interview, now that this is bullshit. You know? This is bullshit.
But you yes.
Fighters. One way up in the State House. But
you were two guys. Robert Kapio Mugabe was your guy.
Ah, fuck off, man.
Mnangagwa was
When we say my war veterans, one way, I looked at it. Yeah, one way, right? Our man nationalists, don't talk about my war veterans. You know?
What's the difference?
I'm not prepared to expand. Yeah.
The truth of the matter is, this is just a convenient way of differentiating. The infighting in ZANU-PF is overpower. In 2017, in fact, to go back 3 years earlier, 2014, there was another factional war that took place in which Joyce Mujuru and those who supported her were booted out of the party. They didn't have the military backing, and that's why they lost. Some people would say. And 3 years later, 2017, there was another factional war. This time with G40 on one side and then Lacoste on the other. The latter had the military support, and so they were able to stage a military coup. And that booted out Mugabe and the G40. At the time, many people condemned that people should not go out and support the military coup. In fact, they should not take any sides in these ZANU-PF factional wars. I've often compared it to a goat taking sides when it comes across two hyenas fighting. The goat has no business in supporting one or the other side, for the simple reason that whichever hyena wins, it will be very happy to celebrate its victory with goat curry. The goat will be on the menu. So the goat will be wiser to make the most of his escape. And in the case of Zimbabwe, the ordinary people would have been wiser, focusing on the problem of dismantling the dictatorship itself. The country was in an economic and political mess precisely because Zimbabwe was a de facto one-party state, ruled by individuals who believed that they have the divine right to rule, and that brainwashed their fellow war veterans into believing that no one else outside ZANU-PF could rule Zimbabwe. The people should have focused their minds on that. How are we going to dismantle the dictatorship? And the factional war within ZANU-PF had nothing to do with them. Particularly when it was clear that whichever side, whichever faction wins, would not bring about any meaningful change to the ordinary people. Because whichever side wins, there will be a dictator in charge. Neither faction was talking of dismantling the ZANU-PF dictatorship itself. They were just fighting of who is going to be the top dog. That is different. Here is a video clip of the late Dr. Alex Magaisa talking on this very issue of the ZANU-PF dictatorship and the military coup.
Alex, we've been watching people cheering the soldiers in the streets. Do you think they're putting too much trust in the army? And could they even come to possibly regret the military takeover?
Well, you know, a military coup is not a picnic. When you get a military government, then you have to expect that things will not be the same as in a civilian regime. A lot of people are happy to see Mr. Mugabe being kicked out of power because he's been there for too long, because he has failed, because they are frustrated. But there is also the risk that having a military regime or a regime that is backed by the military could have its own very serious problems. And Zimbabweans obviously need to take caution.
Okay. And would you say that Zimbabwe is actually ready for, let's say, democracy after almost 4 decades of authoritarian rule by Mugabe?
Well, you know, Mr. Mugabe was only one part of a very extensive system that was causing repression in Zimbabwe. The fact that he may go won't solve all the problems, but it will certainly be an important part in the breaking down of this system. However, the people who are leading this movement against Mugabe at this particular moment are people who have supported him extensively in the past. And therefore, there may be more continuity, unless, of course, when they are in power, they will be showing a different mindset and they'll be treating people differently. Certainly, they have been very liberal. The military authorities have been very permissive in the last few days. It may be that they are doing so because the people are not a threat to them. The people are doing them a favor. Maybe when they're in power, they will change and become completely different. We have seen this in other countries where there have been military interventions. They don't always end well. And so there is need to always qualify what is happening in the euphoria of today with the warnings of things that may go wrong in future.
Well, Dr. Magaisa was right. The people themselves should have realized that this military coup was about internal fight for power. It was not going to bring about any meaningful change in Zimbabwe. And by meaningful change, I mean it was not going to dismantle the ZANU-PF dictatorship. That was the problem. I think it is this that is at the heart of the debate now. The gentleman we saw earlier on in the clip, Blessed Geza, promised the people that he will send out a signal inviting them to join, to go out in the street and support the so-called Geza revolution. Many people expect that this revolution will be a variant on the military coup of 2017 because there's clear evidence that Geza is trying to get the support of the police and the army, just as the police and the army supported the coup in 2017. Why is Geza and company so keen to get the support of the military coup, of the military? Well, in Zimbabwe politics, they have wielded the power. When Geza said what Mnangagwa was doing was bullshit, he was saying the truth. Everybody, many people have been saying the same thing, but in Zimbabwe, ordinary people's voice counted for nothing. Mugabe created the de facto one-party state, and the real power rested in the party, the ruling elite, and the war veterans. At best, the ordinary Zimbabwean had a vote. But if you're a war veteran, you had more than a vote. You had a veto. And this is why Zimbabwean elections have been decided by the ruling elite and the war veterans. The people's vote has been discarded unless it just happened to coincide with what ZANU-PF and the war veterans wanted. That has been at the heart of our problem. So Geza's revolution will only succeed if it has got the backing of the army in particular. That's point number one. Point number two, the army would want the people, when they get the signal, to come out in their hundreds of thousands, as they did in 2017, in support of the coup. They know that the military coup is not the best way of getting a mandate. But if they can get the people to support it, that will give it legitimacy. That is why it is important that when the signal is given, the people go out and support it. But this is also why it is important for the people to stand back and say, no, we are not going to continue to support a political system that has failed us. Zimbabwe is a failed state because the country has been ruled by corrupt, incompetent, and murderous thugs. We have managed to stay in power these last 45 years because they were able to rig the elections. Because the people, the ordinary people, had no political say. As I said, the people's vote during elections is easily discounted. ZANU-PF has got the political system under such tight control, they can manufacture a victory for the party. They can rig elections to deliver victory for the party. And in this case here, they've extended it to the point where even the opposition are in the ruling party's pockets. This is the system that we've got to change. And we're not going to change it by endorsing a military coup, which only seeks to replace one dictator with another. This is exactly what happened in 2017. And we already know. And from the video clip that I played earlier on, Blessed Geza makes it abundantly clear. This revolution is to get one of the Geza individuals into State House. And we know who he is. In some other video clip, he names him VP Chiwenga. Anyone who knows the history of VP Chiwenga will tell you he is a ZANU-PF thug through and through. He was the man behind the military coup, and after the 2017 military coup, he was rewarded with the position of vice president. Rumor has it that after the coup, they sat down with Mnangagwa and they made a gentleman's agreement that Mnangagwa will serve one term and then step down and give him a chance. And Mnangagwa has since reneged on that. He has served 2 terms and now wants even to extend the 2 terms beyond the 2028 when they're due to end. In the picture there is VP Chiwenga just before the military coup of 2017. He was waving Zimbabwe's constitution. He wanted people to believe that he was fighting to uphold the constitution. Of course, it was just the convenience. There is no chapter or verse in that constitution that says a military coup is legal. So what upholding of the constitution was he talking about? I think the people of Zimbabwe have got a simple and clear choice. They should not be involved in ZANU-PF factional war. Having Mnangagwa is one thing, Having Chiwenga is another. But let's not pretend that there is somehow a meaningful choice between the two. There is none. Be just as meaningless as a mouse being asked to choose between a cobra and a black mamba. Either will kill the mouse. So what choice is there? And so if the people of Zimbabwe found themselves in a situation where, in this case here, Mnangagwa is forced out as a result of another military coup, why should they go out in the street in support of it? It's just one dictator replacing another. So why would you want to support it? If anything at all, this is the time when you should stand up firm and say, no, we are tired, we are sick and tired of these musical chairs of one dictator coming in, another one leaving. We want an end to the dictatorship itself. And it is times like this that the people of Zimbabwe must stand up and be counted. I expect the Geza signal will come at one point or another, now that the die has been cast. There is no going back. The infighting within ZANU-PF is clearly where neither side is going to withdraw. It's too late now for that. Just a matter of time. But when that time comes, whatever happens, the people of Zimbabwe must make it abundantly clear that they do not support the system, the dictatorship. Swapping one dictator for another to them is as meaningless as a mouse having to choose between a cobra and a black mamba. We must stand firm. We should have learned a lot from 2017 when we made the mistake of supporting the military coup then. Those who fail to learn from the past will repeat the same mistakes. And after 45 years of rigged elections, electoral coup, military coup, the question is, have we finally learned the lesson? If we have, then we should have nothing to do with the internal fighting in ZANU-PF. If anything at all, we should take advantage of it and making sure we put on the table our demands to end the dictatorship. Every Zimbabwean should have a meaningful say in the governance of the country. This arrangement where the ruling elite and the war veterans have a veto, it's undemocratic, and it is what has landed us into this mess. There should be no compromise on that. The number one democratic reform the country must put on the table is that The right of every Zimbabwean to a meaningful vote must be restored. And no one should ever be above that law. And no one should ever have a veto. That is our position. That should be the people's position. And there should never be any compromise on that. After 45 years of rigged elections, we can end this cycle of madness. And we must. Thank you very much. Have a good evening.